gonna be nothing more than just basic back control in terms of the harness, the hooks, you know, what are some basic things you want to think about. So this is more like a beginner's kind of video, but there are some details I think for the guys who are more advanced that you might forget, because you know, the more you train, you just forget so many things. There's so many moves in the sport. So let's get right into it. Back control maintenance. Let's begin with the first thing. First thing I want to actually talk about before we actually get into the technique is a few main concepts. So number one, first concept is always prioritize the back control over anything else. So let's say, for example, I have the back with my hooks and my harness. If whatever I'm going for, whether it be a choke, whether it be an arm lock, whatever, if I feel I'm going to lose it, if I feel like it's not going to be successful, your number one thing should be go back into the harness, into the hooks, reestablish the position. Don't keep going for it, right? Because you did a lot of work to get here. And once you get here, in my opinion, it's probably the best position in the sport. Personally speaking, the best position in the sport. So you might as well just keep it. Don't risk losing it just for some half-ass submission. Now, next thing, let's talk about the harness. So the harness is going to be one going over, one going under. So we have an under, we have an over. So this one generally I call the choking arm. So this is the choking arm. This is the underhook arm. So what you want to do is get the underhook arm over top of the choking arm. And the grip we're going to make today is just kind of a simple grip. So I'm kind of just give it a name. I call it the gentleman's grip. So basically just taking your hand, grabbing onto your wrist. And the beauty of this grip, you know, versus every other grip, you know, the Gable grip, the S grip, the best thing about this one is that it's so customizable to every person, because some people are bigger and small. I got a tiny helper today, so I have to really adjust the size. So watch the difference here. From when I go to my wrist, I gotta walk up the arm just a little bit more, just to make it a little more snug. So you're gonna go ahead and go under, over top of the choking hand. Now, why do we do that? Because let's say, for example, my partner peels my top hand with her hand. So you go ahead and use your hand to peel it. When she peels it, I can still go for a choke. But watch, if I had it in reverse, if I had the choking hand over top of the underhook hand, and she peels it, she holds it very strong, I'm actually kind of stuck now. I cannot choke with this. And I don't necessarily want to reach over because it removes the ability of me controlling her torso, which is what the harness is, it's controlling the torso. Having done the harness now with my bottom arm going over the top arm, how do I actually hold the harness? It's not just a squeeze, so I'm not just pulling back and squeezing as hard as I can. That's not the idea. You're going to waste a lot of energy doing that. What you want to actually visualize is take away as much space as possible by being as snuggy as possible. Meaning, I'm over here, I'm going to take away as much space as possible. Having done this, look how my head goes down. If you were to drop a penny between us, it wouldn't go through. Because the more I remove, the more she tries to move around now. She goes left, she goes right. It's totally different. Versus if I'm just generally squeezing, she could turn the torso around. All this slack is not good. It's not good at all. So instead of being strong, think about removing all the space. All the space. Make it super snug, and then all of a sudden they're going to think like you just doubled in strength in like 2 seconds. Once we have the harness, so the order of the priority goes, prioritize the back control over everything else. Whatever choke you're going for, arm lock. If you're going to go for it, make sure you're 100% confident it's going to work. Otherwise, just reestablish the position and just try again a little bit later. So that's number one. Number two, underhook arm over the choking arm, and make sure it's snug as possible. And then finally, just make sure your chest is locked to her back. Nice and tight, it's a magnet. The priority is always the harness. The hooks is going to be when I insert one and I insert two. These are the hooks. These hooks always come second, no matter what. The priority should always be controlling the torso. Once you control the torso, the hooks will be a little bit of a game, depending on how good this person is and how annoying they are with their defense. But generally speaking, always apply the harness first, prioritize this, prioritize maintaining your chest to back, making everything nice and snug, and then incorporate your hooks. Let's get into a little bit now of some detail when it comes to the hooks, and let's put everything all together. So I'll have my seatbelt harness. I'm going to fall to the side. Now let's talk about the hooks a little bit. So the first thing to understand when it comes to the hooks, same idea as the harness, it's supposed to be a snug experience. So what you want to do is try to remove as much space as possible, pinch your knees together, curl your heels inward. Curl your heels in. This is like the basic version of a back control. You have this version. You also have the body triangle. So what's the body triangle? Watch as I take my top leg, place it on her hip. This allows me to pull my bottom foot across and then lock the triangle. Now, when you do the body triangle, always make sure the lock is on the top, generally not on the bottom, because there is a foot lock opportunity that they can go for. So always make sure you lock on the top, and finally do not lock over your ankle like this. If you lock over your ankle, Any kind of pull this way with on your foot is gonna hurt you. So as a rule of thumb for me is every time I lock a triangle, if you can wiggle your feet around like this, so I'm just turning my toes. If you can do that, that means it's on your bone and you're good to go. So you have the regular, you have a body triangle, and you have your hooks. Again, always making sure everything is snug. It's about being snug. Power will come later. I'm gonna give you guys one drill to work on. Right? I don't wanna overload too much. I'd rather you guys, during your practice, during your training, work on the details that I talked about earlier. All the details when it comes to where to control, how to hold it, all sorts of stuff like that. That way you get a lot of practice of the very basic fundamentals. But I'm also going to throw in one drill, just so you guys can work on it. It'll give you a good ability to understand how to stay chest to back, making sure everything's nice and snug. What's going to happen is, you always want to make sure your hook's on the inside. You always want to make sure everything's nice and snug. What's going to happen though is sometimes the person over here is going to be defending, obviously. They want to escape. And one escape that someone who's been training for a little while will do is turning their hips to the ceiling. When they turn their hips to the ceiling, look how it pops my hook. Now, whatever you do, don't just accept this. Do not accept a hook being popped off. You always want to recover. So watch the recovery. As I post my foot on the ground, and I want to shovel my hips underneath. You guys see what I'm doing? So that one's called a hip shovel. Once I've done that, look how I bring my hips under. I'm going to roll to the opposite side, reestablish my hook. So now let's shift over this way. So let's do that again. So watch. She turns her hips to the ceiling. Breaking my hook. It's broken now. I don't have it anymore. Look how I maintain this hook on the inside. Post my toes, and now I just want to move my hips underneath her. So watch, slow motion. Look how I'm building base here. And I roll to the opposite side. The only time I need to do this is if she actually does something. So if she's not doing it, I'm not just going to post and go, because that's actually an opportunity for her to escape. So I always want to keep my hooks. It's the moment she actually turns, breaks it, I don't have it no more, I want to post and recover. One more time. Bring it back to the inside, get your hook, or you can get your body triangle. That's it for the video. So it was a very easy one today. A lot of simple stuff, but in most cases, less is more in my opinion. Keeping the basic essentials in your game, the most basic fundamentals, and working on that over and over and over. Over time, once you add moves to it, you're going to improve twice as much, because everything you've done in terms of your foundation is very, very solid, and it's an ongoing thing. You always train it, you always work on it. Actively think about everything. So let's kind of review everything one more time. Number one, the concepts, right? So the concept was always prioritize the back over everything else. And personally, my opinion, and the opinion of many, it's the best position you can get. One of the best positions you can get. You have the best option for attack, so much versatility in what you want to do. So again, prioritize the back over everything else. If you're going for a submission, what have you, make sure you know you're going to get it. You got to really be confident you're going to get it. Otherwise, if you lose it, it's just one of those things. It's very annoying. The other concept is the harness is always priority over the hooks. Always take priority. Now, I'm not saying let your hooks be loose and crap. I'm not saying that. What I am saying though is, if you were to choose to have one thing to focus on when you're in that role, prioritize really making sure that harness is nice and tight. Make sure it's nice and snug, because the hooks can come. The hooks will always be there as long as you're fighting for them. But if you try to imagine doing it in the reverse, imagine you had no harness and hooks. Go ahead and try that out. I guarantee you'll lose the back in 2 seconds. It's not going to happen. So prioritize the harness, make sure it's nice and snug, and then the hooks will come. Minor details now. Remember, the harness is not about just squeezing really hard, it's about removing all the space around you. The underarm goes over top of the choking arm, making a gentleman's grip, because there's so much plasticity in how tight you can make it, how loose you can make it, depending on how big, wide your partner is. So always make sure you get an underhook over top of the choking hand, remove the space as much as possible, and then you apply your hooks. Once you apply your hooks, same thing, same exact concept, remove all the space. And with the hooks, you have a standard hook with both your feet inside the groin, heels pulled in, or you have the body triangle. And what do we have about the body triangle? When you have it, make sure the lock is to the top. So if I'm lying down on my side, the lock is above me, not below me. And when you have the lock, like any figure four, that's what it's called, a figure four. Any figure four you have, make sure your ankle has a lot of freedom to move. If it's underneath a lot of tension, one wrong move and then that ankle is going to kind of go. It's not going to, I'm not saying it's going to break, but it will strain for sure. So make sure always your ankle has a lot of freedom. That way the lock is on your bone. Subscribe to our channel, hit the bell icon, that way you get notified on every upload we ever do. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook.